Welcome to Follow Me to the MROP, a podcast dedicated to the journey of the masculine soul and the transformative power of initiation. My name is Brian Mueller. I live in suburban Dayton, Ohio, and I made my rites at Pilgrim Park in Illinois in 2014. I'm your host, and in each episode of our show, I'll sit down with one man who has made his rites, and I'll invite him to tell his story. This won't be an abstract explanation or a theological lecture, just a real conversation about what it was like to cross that threshold at the rites and what changed afterward. Before we begin, a quick word of gratitude. This podcast is brought to you by Choosing Presence. We believe that the greatest gift a man can give his community is his own presence. In a world of constant distraction, Choosing Presence provides the tools to help you stay grounded in the now. If you'd like an easy way to begin learning about the practice of presence, you can download the free Practicing Presence app at choosingpresence.org/app. Now, the Men's Rites of Passage, or MROP, is an experience designed to help men move from the first half of life into the second, shifting from a focus on ego and achievement to a life of meaning and soul. On this show, we just don't talk about the rites in theory, we talk to the men who have walked the path. Today, we are joined by a man who has made his rites, and we're going to hear exactly what that journey looked like for him. My guest today is John Groleau. Brother, I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for making the time and for being willing to share your story.
Hey, nice spending time with you, Brian.
John, tell us where you're from and how you spend your time these days.
Originally, I was born in Lewiston, Maine, and I met my wife in grad school in Ohio, and she convinced me to move to Chicago area. So I live in Aurora, Illinois. Spend my time. I retired and had a heart attack in 2019. I retired in 2020, and I spend my time. We have 6 grandkids in the area, so we babysit. I spend a lot of time being prepare, as they call me. Do a lot of woodworking. I make wooden toys. Actually, in the process of making jewelry boxes and treasure boxes for the grandkids. I'm pretty involved with Knights of Columbus. I'm currently the Grand Knight for our council in our parish. Layla and I have an Airbnb with 2 properties in Wisconsin, which keeps us busier than I want to be. And I work out pretty regularly so I can avoid heart attack number 2.
Thank you. Now let's dive in and talk about the Men's Rites of Passage. The MROP is a unique experience. It's not a retreat or a workshop. It's an initiation. Many men arrive at the rites at a crossroads in their lives looking for something they can't quite name. Before we dive into the why and the how, let's start at the very beginning. When and where did you make your rites?
I made my rights in, I can't remember, it was either 2012 or 2013, in Texas, outside of Austin. I think it was called The Ranch. And Jim Taylor was actually the weaver, and I think that was his first. He said that was his, whatever year it was his first year as weaver. So that's where it happens.
And about how many men were there?
Oh, lordy. Uh, I'm thinking probably 50 to 60 from what I remember.
And when you think back to that weekend, what's the first image or feeling that comes forth for you?
There was, the thing that sticks out of my mind was that part of the experience where you are by yourself in like a 6 foot by 6 foot square in the middle of the desert, kind of, and just sitting there with a flask of water and a journal and the envelope that they give you. And there was just, it was a little squirrely at first. And then once I settled down, was really listening and paying attention and to my surroundings. But the prompts that they gave me, the stuff that they wanted you to think about were, I hadn't really thought about them in a environment of solitude like that ever. So it was pretty mind expanding.
Now, in general terms, what was the entire weekend like for you?
I've always enjoyed, ever since I was in high school when I belonged to a youth group, I've always enjoyed spending time with people and really, I'm not a superficial person. I mean, chatting about the weather gets old after about 5 or 10 seconds. And so really being able to get down and find out what's on men's hearts and to really have that connection was what really spoke to me.
Now, without sharing anything you'd consider confidential, tell us about some elements of the rites that really stood out to you.
As I said, I think that, it's now like, 13, 14 years ago. I'm trying to remember what it was like. But oddly enough, the one thing that really had a huge impact on me was one of the gentlemen who was there to serve. I forget the role that he had, worked in a VA hospital. And he and I had a chance to share about centering prayer, and he actually taught meditation to vets at a veterans hospital, and, I've been doing centering prayer for a while, and he was telling me that, they found statistically and medically, they found that if you meditate once a day, it reduces your stress levels by about 30%, and if you do it twice a day, it reduces it by 70%, and I'd never really done it twice a day, and, so I really had made a commitment to start doing it twice a day, and, so for me, that may have not been the original intention of going on the MROP, but that meeting, and I can't remember the guy's name, really impacted me for my life. That was a huge long-term effect for me.
I don't ask this question a lot, but, I'm curious, what was it like meeting the other men, that were in your group at the Rights?
It was, they're all different. They're all the same. I mean, everyone came with different, issues, different expectations, but I think we all crave the same thing, which is having a deeper connection with God and having a deeper connection with men, which is, you know, eh, I mean, I've been married for will be 41 years, and I love my wife, but there's just certain things that are I'm more comfortable and have more of a connection with men than I do with Layla in terms of if I'm trying to share what's going on in my life.
Have you been able to keep in touch with any of the men in your council or any of the men that you met at the Rights, or do you see them occasionally?
I do actually. One of the nobody in that particular MROP, but some of the guys that in other MROPs or other retreats in the Illuman events. I could see them a couple times a year. One gentleman in particular, he and his wife are in our marriage encounter community, so we see each other once a month.
Now, I want you to think back to, the circumstances that led you to participate in the Rights. What was going on in your life at that time and influenced your decision to attend?
Oh, golly. Well, I had my own business. I was a financial planner, and I was putting in, a pretty easy schedule of, 70 hours a week, nights, weekends. Our kids were actually our kids were the last one was out of college, and so you're kind of empty nesters, and you're trying to figure out what's the next phase. And I'm thinking about retiring and stuff, and just a lot of stress. Just my life was very, very stress filled, and so I was. I'm sorry. You know what, Brian? I just got sidetracked. What was the question again?
No, I was asking to that's all right. I was asking you, and you were describing some of the circumstances in your life, as you made the decision. So what was it at that point that said, "Yeah, I wanna do this"?
I'd say that it was that. I don't know if it's Saint Augustine that talked about the God hole. Our hearts will not rest until they rest in Thee, O Lord. And I was just feeling spiritually restless. I was looking for something. I've always been a pretty deep person, and I just something deep down was missing, and I needed to fill that.
So, thinking back to the day that you kind of arrived at the Rights and first came in, were you carrying with you something that you were hoping for to get at the Rights, or was there also or in spite of was there something else that you were fearing, about the Rights?
Did you say hearing or fearing?
Fearing.
No, you know what? I've been going on retreats since gosh, since high school. So I've always enjoyed going on retreats, and some of them have had a major impact in my life. I really didn't go with any expectations of, the friend of mine from Marriage Encounters, like, "Oh, you're gonna love it." Very little description in terms of what's gonna happen. He said it'll be life-changing, and I was really up for having a new experience in my life.
And when you think back to the day that you left the Rights, so right after the closing of the Rights and you left to go back to the airport or whatever, how did you feel at that moment?
Uh, I guess a combination of, cleansed might be a word, and, like, I gotten rid of some baggage, hopeful. I mean, having met some other men, and I was looking forward to hopefully, being able to continue that experience, and, just feeling more at peace.
Now, it's been, I guess, getting close to 15 years since you participated in the Rights. Since that time, what has changed in your life, practically, relationally, spiritually?
Well, um, I think, what's changed is I have become much more at peace. I mean, things that I prayed for in my life for years are just asking God for inner peace, and, I always seem to struggle to find that, and so I've really been able to, I think, been committed to doing center and prayer twice a day since then, and, center and prayer doesn't really eliminate the problems, it just helps them flow through or around me, because I'm just offering less resistance. And so I think it's been a good, that's been a major impact. And then I think, you know, sometimes you get involved in small groups and there are always, every once in a while, you're going to find some of these groups is just going to drive you absolutely batty just because he either talks too much or doesn't really answer the question or whatever. And I find myself being able to let go of my preconceived notions of how he should respond or shouldn't respond and just kind of realize, he's at where he's at. So I think as a result of me being more at peace within myself, I'm able to let others be at peace with wherever they are in life.
When you think back and you say you had a friend that kind of supported you on the rights and urged you to go, I think you said he told you it would be a life-changing experience, but when you told other people that you wanted to do these rights or were gonna participate, like your wife, maybe even some friends, did they have any particular reaction? Were they supportive or were they resistant or
No, nobody was resistant. They were supportive. I think that yeah, no, I really didn't. I mean, there's people that I know that may be a little on the, let's say, conservative side of our church, and sometimes they may look at Father Richard Rohr's thoughts or philosophies as being quote unquote too liberal. But no, I don't think so at all. I've become more of an and person through this. So instead of being, conservative or liberal, Republican or Democrat or whatever it is, I'm more the and a lot more encompassing and accepting of others. And it's hard to say I'm less judgmental because our minds are judge making machines, but I think I have become more empathetic and less judgmental towards others as well as myself.
No, I think what you just said kind of alludes to some of what I'm asking now, but I want to know, how did the rights affect your really personal relationships, like your relationship with your wife, perhaps with your kids?
With the kids, I came back and realized how, as a dad, you always try to be your best, but sometimes you at some point you become aware of, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was treating people this particular way. And my tendency was to treat people like idiots. And it's like, what for whatever reason, somebody say something which I regard as stupid, like, oh my gosh, this guy's an idiot. And if you reflect long enough, you realize that's because I regarded myself as an idiot. So when I recognized that, I really used that time to go back to my kids and also my wife and, come clean with the way that I had been treating them and seeing them and kind of not only ask for their forgiveness to move on, but also said, listen, if you see me doing this, let me know. Just because it's going to take time to correct this habit or behavior that's been going on for years. So it was, I think, a real mile mark for our family.
So, how has your understanding of masculinity, initiation, or the purpose of a man's life changed over this time? And maybe we can even start with like, did you have a preconception of initiation prior to it, and then after experience it, did that change?
My preconception of initiation was I never really had that in growing up. My dad was, he was a good dad, but my grandfather was never around. He was, up in Canada lumberjacking. So my dad and his brothers never really had a strong father image. So the initiation of stuff you'd expect or you'd hope you get never really happened. So I never really learned how to make. My dad really never showed me how to make decisions, really how to interact with other men. Um, and so it's kind of stuff that it's kind of like there's this fish in Africa. It's a cave fish and it can't has blind and it just kind of bumps along, hoping to find food. And I think a lot of men go through life bumping along without really having a clear vision for what their life is for and the meaning. And so, as I said, I really had no preconceived motion of idea of what initiation was, but it's up after I went through that, I realized I want my kids to, especially my sons, I want my sons to have some type of experience like this so that they can learn how to look at the life through a man's eyes rather than children, which I think it's an epidemic issue in our world. Men just don't know how to act as men these days.
What do you think is the message for younger men today in terms of a more positive message about masculinity? Maybe that you would offer to your sons, even to your grandchildren?
First thing that pops into my head is, it's okay to cry, which I have done in front of my kids. Every time I give a retreat at church, I'm usually kind of leaking around the eyes at some point. So, being able to open up your feelings and also recognizing that feelings are neither good or bad, they just are. So there's no judgment in terms of, whether you're sad or happy or angry. It's just what you do with those feelings that causes problems. So
Mm.
expressing your feelings is great. I think that's kind of what's popping up so far.
What's the biggest takeaway, or maybe there might be more than one, but the biggest takeaway for you from the rights?
One, I guess, is the recognizing that I never want to stop growing, either in my faith or in my relationships, because it's either I look at it, I know it's kind of black and white. Either you're growing or you're dying. And so if you're not growing in your faith, if I'm not deepening my relationship with God or with my wife or with my kids or with my friends, then I'm basically kind of checking out. It's like that the gospel passage, the servant who took his talent and buried it in the ground, as opposed to the other ones that multiplied them.
And what counsel or advice would you give a man who's considering participating in the rights?
I think I guess I'd ask him where he is in life and what he's looking for. And you know, uh, having read Father Richard's book, Falling Upward, and if the gentleman is like 55 and older, I'd want to ask him, where are you at in your first half of life, second half of life? And I'd say, this experience is really going to help you now that you built your tower and everything else. Now is the time to give back. Now is the time to really make use of the talents and gifts that God has given you. And this is going to be a process to really help you establish a vision for what your next years are, and also having a group of guys that can support you to grow in that direction.
I just have really one more question for you, John, and that is, what would you say about the Illuman community? You're someone who's been involved somewhat with Illuman since you've made the rights. You participate in retreats and go to other events. What do you have to say about Illuman as a community and what that experience has been like for you?
I think it's a very unique community. It really is. I'd say it's anti-establishment, maybe. I mean, it's really. I think the Illuminate community is really helping men to become genuine, to really clarify and weed out the things that are unimportant or less important, and to focus on where we should be going as a man, as a community, as a culture. And I think having that kind of experience is really going to be a beacon for other people. I mean, if you look around I mean, this year, I think like last year, they said, I know in our diocese, the amount of people that are getting into rites of Christian initiation, coming back to the church, they've 50% increase over last year, and they've doubled from that the year before. So people are searching, and we need to find them. We need to find them a place that they could plug into, that they could belong and be part of. And I think Illumina is definitely a part of that process and a part of that community.
Brother, thank you so much. I appreciate your honesty, your courage, and thank you for giving us that window into your MROP experience and beyond. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks, Brian.
For those listening who are now feeling a tug in their own soul and are curious to learn more, allow me to share a bit about the history of these rites. The men's rites of passage was originally developed by Father Richard Rohr and was first offered at Ghost Ranch, New Mexico in 1996. While it was supported for many years by the Center for Action and Contemplation, since 2012, Illuman has been the steward of this work, preserving and adapting the rights for men all over the world. To learn more about the history and the theology behind this work, I highly recommend reading Adam's Return by Richard Rohr. If you are ready to make your rights, there are 4 opportunities in the United States and another in the United Kingdom in 2026. The first is in Northern California, May 13th through the 17th. The second in the United Kingdom, July 22nd through the 26th. And in Illinois, August 12th through the 16th. There's one on the East Coast in New Jersey, September 16th through the 20th. And the final one of the year is in Texas, which is an MROP and Umbrales, our Spanish language rights, September 30th through October 4th. You can find details and registration information at illumin.org/MROP or illumin.org/events. Additionally, mark your calendars for Awaken, the annual national gathering of Illumin, taking place November 5th through the 8th in New Mexico. You can find more at illumin.org/awaken. Finally, a special thank you to our sponsor, Choosing Presence. If today's conversation moved you, I encourage you to bring more intentionality into your daily life. Download the Practicing Presence app for free at choosingpresence.org/app. It's a simple but profound way to stay connected to the journey we've discussed today. Thank you for listening to Follow Me to the MROP. Until next time, brothers, stay present.